Today is Thursday, November 21st, 2013, and this is the start of an interview with Sadie Benson at her home on Main Street in Hopkinton. I'm Nancy Clark, interviewer for the Oral History Project, and this interview will become part of Hopkinton's verbal memories for current and future residents. Sadie will be celebrating her 88th birthday next month. She was born in 1925 and moved to Hopkinton just a few years after that, so she's been here for close to 9 decades. Sadie, would you like to start by just telling a little bit about what you remember about being a youngster in Hopkinton?
Oh, well, yes, I remember the first memory. My sister and I were in our first house away on Hayden Row Street, and when I was just a little girl, I remember we used to play out in the backyard, and we had romper. I remember having rompers on, and my sister and I, Doris, used to have a great time out in the backyard playing. Mm-hmm. And my brother was born shortly after. He was born in 1929, and we moved from that home up to right across from Chestnut Street, where Chestnut comes on to Main Hayden Row Street. That's how we moved there, and it was a 2-family house, and we had people. My father owned the house, and we had a family living in the other apartment. And some people remember Margaret Nugent. She lived with her parents there, and she grew up, and she married. She was married and had 5 children. Margaret, her married name was Varnum at the time, Margaret Varnum. Mm-hmm. And then I remember that was 1938, because we lived in that house when the 1938 hurricane. And I can remember that day of the 1938 hurricane, and there was a nut tree out in back of our house, and I was out there. We were out there picking up the nuts. The wind was starting to blow, and then it turned into just a terrible storm, the 1938 hurricane. And there was a grocery store next door. Their name was Potter, James Potter, Nelson, and Marion, and Gladys. They were all the children, and the roof flew off of the store during that hurricane. The roof came, and they had ice cream. I remember they had ice cream, and they were bringing it all around to the neighbors, because they didn't have any way to keep it cold. So we were all eating ice cream at the time of the 1938 hurricane. And it was real. And things here it was a long time before we got our electricity back. It was months before we got our electricity back, and we just had to live without it, But we did, and that was one of the real bad storms we had. Everything was shut down, completely shut down at that time. Yeah. So, and that was, we would go, at that time, I was going to the little school, where the Historical Society is now. That was our school until we went up to the center school up here in Hopkinton, in the center of town. And I remember that it was 4 years that we went to that. I went to that school, and my sister Doris was a year ahead of me. Doris, Melvin, we were so close together, and we had a lot of good times. And then when we'd go to school in the morning, and there were 4 classes in one room, 4 of us. I don't know how the teacher did it. And I remember the first teacher I remember, her name was Dolly Bent, and she was very nice, a very nice teacher. And then we had another teacher her name was Margaret Madigan. She became Margaret Foley afterwards. and she taught down at that little school. And then after we did well there because we came up to the center school in here, and we did. I mean, we seemed to fit right in as far as the scholastics went, you know, with the other kids and everything. And I remember Margaret. One of the teachers was Miss. What was her name? She used to wear a long black skirt. Her name was Margaret Kirby. Margaret Kirby, and she had black boots. I remember she had black boots, but she was a good teacher. She was the one I came up. I was the first teacher I had at Center School. I think I was in the 5th grade, and then I think Kitty Bartlett was teaching up there at Kitty Bartlett, and there was a Mary Wallace. Teacher by the name of Mary Wallace, I remember.
You have a wonderful memory of all your teachers.
Yeah. And Kitty Bartlett lived in town here until she passed away just recently. And then, what else did I remember about that school?
So did the school down on Hayden Row is now the Historical Society, and before that was the Grange,
right? And
before that was your school. Did they close it? Is that why you went to Center School?
Yes, it was. I think I was. Our class was the last school. Last class that was in that school. That would have been when I was in the 4th grade.
Right. So that would have been the mid-1930s.
Yeah, it would have been. I was going to write down some dates, but I hadn't got a chance to.
Okay,
yeah.
Well, if you were in 4th grade and you were born in 1925. So,
yeah, I was in the 4th grade, and then I went to the 5th grade up there, and then we went from there to the high school. I must have gone to the high school, and I remember.
And that's the Brick High School
the one here, right here.
The street.
And I had there was a Miss Duffy was the teacher. Do you remember Miss Duffy?
I've heard of Miss Duffy.
Yeah, and then there was I can't remember some of them. Marion Harris was and some of the I didn't play sports very much. We lived down in Hayden Row, and we didn't have transportation and everything. And the sports weren't as popular at that time as they are now, but they did have sports, you know, but I didn't play too many sports. Doris or I, either one did, you know. But I took in high school I learned to type, and I learned to I did the business end of high school, and I think I was a pretty good student in high school, and I graduated in 1943.
Do you remember at all how many graduates would have been in your class?
Yes, I think I have a picture of them. I wish I had. I don't have it right here, but I think there must have been 30-something. There's up at the senior center. John Cahill was up there today. Do you know him? Do you know that? Yeah. Well, he graduated the year I did, and we had a class. You know, the last this just recently they had a class reunion down in Woodville, and our class was there because it would have been our we graduated in 43, and this was anyway. We went the class. We were going to have it would have been our 60th,
70th, I think.
70th.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, gee, really?
That's remarkable.
70th, it would have been. So I went to that, and another friend of mine came on from Illinois. Her name is Kitty O'Donnell. She used to be Kitty. What was her maiden name? Moran. Kitty Moran, and she came on for the.
Reunion?
Reunion, yeah. We went together, and then John was there, and there was another Mary Bosconi. she lived up in Maine. She Mary. I don't remember her graduating with us. She may have graduated the year before. I don't know, but I don't. But she was there, and but there weren't too many of us. Our class is really getting sparse. We've had we had a 55th anniversary, and we had a 60th. We did pretty, and then we had a 65th. We had a 65th, but we couldn't. That was the last one. We just couldn't get enough together for this one to have, because people every time we'd have one, there'd be four less the next time,
Yes.
four less and four. So we had a nice time at that reunion down in Woodville. It was very nice.
I bet you did a lot of reminiscing.
Oh yeah, it was nice. I saw a lot of people down there. It was very nice.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And what you mentioned to me earlier that you moved again on Hayden Row closer to town.
Yeah.
And that had to do with your father's work. What did your
Yeah.
father do?
He was a florist at that time, and he grew carnations. And he built one long, it was 200 feet long, I remember, the greenhouse, and then he built a second green, two of them. And so they were all carnations. And we used to, they used to have to keep, in the winter, it was very difficult because they had to keep them warm, and they used to burn coal, they had a coal furnace. And my father and mother worked so hard, they used to have to be up all night keeping those furnaces going keeping the, and that's the reason people don't grow flowers here that need heat in the winter. They're flown from the south now. There's no more, and they used to grow roses. In Framingham, I remember they had roses growing in different greenhouses.
Wow.
There was Severs, I think. I think that was the name of Framingham. Yeah.
And did your parents sell those wholesale, I guess, to florists?
Yes, we used to. The Railway Express used to come, and we would have to pack them into boxes a certain way. There was regulations how they had to be packed, and put in boxes and wrapped, and the Railway Express took them to New York. We shipped them to New York, the carnations, yeah. So that was what my father's business was, yeah.
And where would the railroad have been? Do you know where he had to take them?
Well, I imagine Framingham. I would think so, Framingham, yeah. But my father used to, we had a retail business too, though, where they did a lot of retail business. My mother took a course in floral arranging and corsages and everything, and she used to do all that.
And so was that located where Sunnyside Gardens is now? The florist that's on Hayden Row? All right, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Those are great remembrances. Anything else you can think about? We're sort of in the 1930s and 1940s. Anything else you can think about Hopkinton during those years, with the Great Depression going on or with World War II going on?
Yeah. My father at one point, he was he never got interested in politics too much, but I remember for a short time he was a selectman, probably just for one term. I forget, I don't think he was very long. And Herman Lauder was a selectman around that. Do you remember that name?
Well, the Larders from Woodville.
Yes. Herman, that would be Herman Lauder, yeah. Yeah, and so I remember that he was, but my father was, he was an outgoing man, very outgoing, but he never was the type of man that would get involved in I think he realized that wasn't for him. When he got, after being in it a year, or maybe it was just a year or two, I don't know. But he was different. He was a different personality. He was very good for his business, though, because he did very well with customers coming in and everything,
Yeah, good. And what, so you had sister Doris, and you mentioned a brother too.
And I had an older sister, Florence.
All right, so there were 4 of you.
Yeah.
So what else do you remember about being a kid? You know, what did you and your brothers and sisters and friends do?
Yeah, well, we used to skate. I used to love to ice skate. We skated a lot. I'd get skates for Christmas, you know, because we really liked to skate. And we were allowed to go out, like you wouldn't allow children to go out now, but we'd go even out at night, a group of us, and we'd go to places where there'd be water, you know, like a little pond or something, and we'd skate and they'd build fires, you know, around the edge, and we used to have a wonderful time skating.
Yeah, it sounds
We
like
did.
a lot of fun.
Yeah, we did. And we used to swim in the summer. There was a ledge. My mother and father never saw it, but it was up on. You go up Granite Street, and you take a left, and it goes over to Milford, and there was a swimming place up in there, and we used. It was not too good looking when you looked at it, and we used to swim in there a little bit. I wasn't really a avid swimmer or anything, but we used to have fun, you know, up there at the ledge, we called it. And
Was there actually a ledge that some kids would jump off of?
there was not very, they wouldn't take any bad chances, you know, but I mean, there was rocks all around there, you know. We called it the ledge. And but I don't think the kids go up there. I think they've probably filled it in now. You know, I don't know. I never hear of anybody going up there now.
Yeah.
But we were never allowed to do anything. It was too bad because my parents really were very protective of us, you know. But that's one thing you would never let your children do now, would you? You wouldn't let them drive, but they felt as though it was safe at that time to do that, you know.
Yeah.
And then we used to go way down to almost to the Milford line sometimes, and it was the place there that we used to skate.
Yeah. And what, did you ever come uptown?
Yeah, we did, but you know, we used to go shopping in Framingham. I remember we'd take the bus.
Okay.
The bus. There was a bus that went every hour to Framingham. There was the bus drivers were what was their names? It was Andy Cassidy, and there was a Mullen. I think the other driver was his name was a Mullen. His last name, and I can't think it was his first name. But they were the regular bus drivers. They drove every day.
So they knew you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they knew all the people, you know. Yeah, and we'd go to Framingham, and we'd go to the movies once in a while down at there was a St. George Theater in Framingham, and we used to go down to once in a while, you know.
Yeah.
And
this would be downtown Framingham, right? It's all
it was
would have
downtown.
been there,
It was
right?
downtown. Oh, that was
No shopping centers.
That was the shopping center then.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there was a nice stores there. There was the New York store and Rayfield's. I remember they had really nice things there, you know. Yeah.
And did the bus come up Hayden Row? Or did you have to come into town?
No, it didn't come up Hayden Row.
So you would come to the center of town?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes, my father, we never had a car until my father started his own business. When he was working in Milford, he worked for 16 years. He used to ride with a man. He rode with a man, so we didn't have a car. And but then he got a car.
Do you remember your first car? Their first car?
Yeah, no. Well, I was. It was a nice car because he used it in his business. You know, I remember Doris. She had got her license. My father taught her to drive, and he was the terrible driver. So somebody taught him to drive. There was a man in town. His name was George Irvine. He was a car salesman, and he was friendly with my father. And he taught my father how to drive and sold him. He got him a car, you know, and so then my father wasn't a good driver. Never was a good driver, and because he was in his 40s. He was in the early 40s when he got his license. So Doris, I remember she got her license, and she had to go deliver flowers, and she told me the first day she went delivering flowers, her legs, she was so nervous, she said her legs were shaking. But she had to deliver flowers. So, you know.
And what store, what did they have in the center of Hopkinton? You know, if you did not go to Framingham to shop, where did you go in Hopkinton?
Oh, down, there was the post office. That was down where, it was on the corner, like in the area where the gas station is, in that area somewhere, you know.
Yeah.
And then there was the town barn across the street, you know, where the buses and I guess the buses, it wasn't the trains. Then I never was here when there was trains, you know.
Yeah.
And then there was I remember Colulla's had a grocery store up on Main Street.
But further up the hill.
Further up the hill, and there was a Woods grocery store. Walter, did you know the
Walter Wood.
Yeah, that was over. There was a Woods grocery store, and there was Rose's Beauty Shop was there, and let me think what else was there. Oh, they used to have the Central House was there, you know, up in the middle of the hill there. And then there was...
a little bar.
Yeah, and then there was a store they used to call it Danny Days. It was he used to have men's clothing. Did you ever hear that, Danny Day?
Yeah, one person mentioned that to me, yeah.
Yeah, and my father never liked to get clothes. My mother used to have to buy all his clothes, so she'd go to Danny Days and get him shirts.
Yeah.
And then there was Danny Day, and then there was another, like at 5 and 10. What was it? I can't remember the name of that now. But it was a good, you know, they had a lot of different things there that you'd buy.
Yeah. And was there a place that had like a soda fountain for the kids if you could go down for a treat?
Oh, let me think. There was, when we were real little, I don't remember, we would go with I don't remember, we'd go with my parents, father would take us Milford once in a great while. I don't know how we'd get there, but we would get, there was a place over there, they called it the Crown, and we'd have, they'd have ice cream and stuff there, you know.
So it was a good treat. Yeah.
That was a nice treat. But I don't remember about coming up to, there must have been a place up, Brown and Smith's. There was Brown and Smith's. That was for a long time. That was a paper store.
Yeah, that store had a little bit of everything,
Yeah,
sounds
they
like.
did. Yeah, Brown and Smith's, yeah.
And was there a counter there where people could
Yeah,
get
yes,
food?
it was. But I mean, if you really wanted a treat, you'd go over to Milford.
Yeah. And I've heard of Brown and Smith's. nobody's ever told me much about. I assume it was started by a Mr. Brown and a Mr. Smith. Do you know
yes,
those families?
Brown. Well, Smith was. What was his wife was a teacher. John Smith. Did you know Smith, a teacher? Her name was O'Brien. She was Miss O'Brien, and she married Smith.
I didn't, but
No, you
it would have been before my time.
Yeah. But I think that that was Brown was the Brown. You remember? Did you ever hear about the Brown family?
Tell me some more about the Brown family.
Well, they lived in Hayden Row.
Okay.
And there was the father's name was George Brown, and his wife, I forget what his wife's name, but I remember the Brown and their daughter Betty. Her name was must have been Elizabeth, we called her Betty. Betty lived next door. There's a little house. Do you know where the Browns lived in Hayden Row?
I don't.
Oh.
Can you describe it?
Well, do you know where the Chestnut Street comes out?
Yes, where the
well,
flashing light is.
Yeah, and then you come down towards Milford,
Mhm.
and on the right hand side, it's just a short distance down. On the right hand side is where the Brown's house was. It's a good sized white house, and it's still there. It's been well taken care, well taken. And there are two houses. The last house before you get to Granite. You know where Granite Street is.
Yes.
And then there's some new houses were built in there.
Yeah.
And then you come up a little bit, and there was one older house, and then the next house up
All right.
was Brown's.
All right.
The next house right there, it was on the right-hand side, and there was Betty Fannin. She married Fannin from Ashland, Leo Fannin, and they had 4 children. And my sister used to babysit for them. That would be their Mr. Brown's daughter. And then there was Margaret Brown and Paul Brown and Walter Brown. You know Walter, and I mean you've known the name.
Right.
Walter, and there was Tommy Brown. He married. Didn't Tommy Brown marry that girl from Woodville, Rosalie Davis? Did you remember? No, you don't. It was before your time. Okay. Well, that was the Browns. You've heard the Browns in
That's the Brown
Boston,
family.
the Boston Arena.
Yes.
Well, that's the Browns.
The connection with the Celtics, yeah.
And they were connected with the marathon. He used to shoot the gun off at the marathon. George, that's
his statue on the common.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
that was him right there, and they were nice people.
Nice.
And so it was right at that remember that.
It was a pretty prominent family in Hopkinton.
Huh?
Sounds like the Browns were a very prominent family in Hopkinton.
Oh, yes, they were. Very nice, because they were, they did a lot for the town,
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
And so after you graduated from high school, you went into the workforce? What did
I
you
just
do?
went a year to a business school.
Okay.
They call it was South Middlesex Secretarial. They call it South Middlesex Secretarial School. And but then I was more interested in figure. I like to do bookkeeping. My sister Doris was more interested in. She went there too. She was more interested in secretarial work. She was a very good secretary.
Well, I knew her from the school system.
Yeah, and she worked for before she was married. She worked for a lawyer at Denison for 8 years before she. And my oldest sister was a nurse, Florence, and she was she lived in did mission work, and she was in Brazil for 30 years. She was a nurse down there, Florence.
For her. And what did you do when you got a job?
I did bookkeeping.
Yeah, and where did you work?
I worked at down here at Western Nurseries. At first, when I did, but when I was younger though. When I was younger, I'm forgetting when I was younger. I worked down in Framingham at they had 7 retail stores. They called them Berkeley stores, and they sold all kinds of domestic sheets and all domestic blankets and things like that. And they sold a lot of women's clothing too, but they did a lot of sheets and things like that.
Linens.
And I worked in their office in Framingham. That's what I did. I worked there for until I got married and afterwards, Yeah, and I did bookkeeping and all kinds of work there,
And when you went to work at Western Nurseries, had Western Nurseries just come to Hopkinton?
Oh, no. They were here quite a while before but I worked for the old people. They were so old, Peter and Anna. Peter, that would be people, Wayne and Roger, they'd be their grandparents. Their grandparents. Their father died. Eddie, he was I liked Ed Mez. His wife is still living in.
She in Westboro? Is she in Westboro or is she in Golden Pond?
She's in Golden Pond.
Right.
As far as I know.
Yeah.
As far as I know, the last I knew she was. Yeah. I don't know. I don't hear about her very often. You know. No.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that's. But I worked for Anna and Peter. They came from Weston. That's why they call it Weston Nurseries.
Yes.
And they were such nice people. They were Latvian people.
Yeah.
Oh, they were just the sweetest, nicest people.
So you worked there for a long time?
Oh, they owned it. Yeah. Well, they started it in Weston, and then they needed more land, so they came out here.
And how long did you work there? You worked there for a long time.
Oh, did I work? Oh, yeah. I forget how many years. Quite a few years I worked there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you and your husband, so you live on Main Street right now. You want to tell us a little bit about maybe how you met your husband, if he's a Hopkinton boy or not, and how you ended up here?
Well, I met him at church. We went to a church in Milford for a while, a Baptist church in Milford. What happened was, we used to, I'm not telling you all the family, we used to go to the church up here in Hopkinton, they right in Main Street here. And it got to be, there was a lot of, some churches, it's hard. Being a minister is not an easy task, you know. I have a nephew, a minister. Anyway, so we just went over to a church in Milford for a while, over to a Baptist church right on Pine Street in Milford. And that's where I met my husband. Yeah.
He was from Milford.
He was from Milford. He lived on Fountain Street, and he's Swede. He was a full-blooded Swede. His aunt and his father were both Swedes. They talked very broken English, you know. They were from Sweden. Yeah.
And what year did you get married?
1950.
All right. And then did you settle in Hopkinton?
Yeah, we had a what do you want to call it? A apartment on Hayden Street for 3 months. It was right after the war. And it was so hard to get a place to live. It was impossible. So we got an apartment, and then this place was the people that built this place. They lived here about 10 years. They built it. Their name was Bridge, and his wife wasn't well. I don't know that she had was Alzheimer's or what it was, you know, but she needed to be somewhere where she could get care. So
So you bought the house. You've been here ever since.
Yeah, so that was the house. I imagine it was about, I don't know how old the house was. It wasn't very old when we bought it anyway.
And you moved in the 50s, in the early 50s.
53.
53, yeah.
53.
Oh, that's right. You were just in that apartment for a little while.
Yeah.
And what did your husband do? Where did he work?
He was He worked for the telephone company, and he worked for 38 years for the telephone company. So he was in the service. He came out of the service, and he got a job right away. He was fortunate that he got a job. It was shortly after coming out of the service. And he just hit it right, you know.
Yeah. And as a young married couple in Hopkinton, what was that like? Was there a lot of socializing? Did you go out with other people or have people over? Who were some of your friends?
Yeah, we did. We were family oriented, but we were friends too. We had friends. I remember the first year when we were married in 1950, and I remember in our apartment, I had Thanksgiving in my apartment that year, and we had a wonderful time. And it was, I just had a little stove, you know, but we had the best time. And there was a lot of people there. My father and mother were there, and my aunt and her husband were there, and we had a good time.
Yeah, and then your husband's family was in Milford, so they were close by also.
Yeah, they were there. They were there.
Yeah.
Some of them. He had two brothers that were. They were not. They weren't in this area. They lived in other areas, so we didn't see them as much. We'd see them once in a while, you know.
Right.
Yeah, but we were. His father. My husband's mother died very. He was young, and so his aunt came. It was really came in and took the place of his mother. Really.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's nice. I think in the olden days, more people did stay in the same locale, so you did have a lot of family. And today, people seem to be so spread out.
Oh, I know it. I know it. Yeah, we did. We had a good. My mother had two twin sisters, and at their funeral, I remember thinking, you know, they left us a good legacy. They did. When I stop and think of it, because some people don't have that, you know, but they just was there when they were needed. They were there.
Yeah,
and that was good.
It's a nice tribute, yeah.
Yeah.
And do you remember some of the other couples that you socialized with, and what would people do on a Friday or Saturday night?
Oh, we used to. I remember Doris, my sister, and I. Her husband lived in Hopedale, and we'd go to there was a red shuttered a little restaurant over there, and we'd go there and we'd enjoy it, you know.
Yeah.
We'd go to the restaurant and we'd go bowl. We'd bowl. Doris's husband liked to bowl, I know.
And where was the bowling alley?
It was in Milford. I think it was in Milford. Yeah, Milford. There was a couple of different places they go, you know.
Yeah.
But we didn't do a lot of crazy. You know, we just had good times together. You know,
Yeah.
we really did. We didn't do a lot of. You know, it was a different time. It was a different time altogether than it is now, you know. And we just had a good, simple times together, you know. Yeah.
And when did you notice that Hopkinton was really changing?
Changing?
And do you have any ideas of what you can attribute the change to?
Well, Hopkinton is. I think that Hopkinton is changing for the better.
Good.
I think it is, definitely, changing for the better, because I think that there's a lot of people in Hopkinton that are working hard. I think there are, you know, because I look around, I'm not doing anything, but I know that a lot of the younger people that are in this town are working hard. Isn't that right?
Yes, it's a great town. I do agree.
Do you agree with that?
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, and people your age, and you know, like the selectmen. I like to listen to the selectmen. I haven't listened lately, but for a while I do listen to the selectmen's meetings and everything, and I'm interested, you know, and I feel as though the people in this town are working.
Mm-hmm.
They are, and they're interested, and that makes a difference. For us,
right?
Isn't that right?
Right, and I'm sure there's a lot more for them to do now that the town's a lot bigger.
Yeah,
But, yeah.
I know. Yeah. That's right, but I mean, it's good that we have people like that.
Right.
Because if you know, that's what we need.
Yeah.
We need more of it in our country. In Washington. Oh, gee.
I agree. Living on Main Street, I'm sure you've seen this street and the volume of cars that go by your house really change since you moved here in the early 50s.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We, you know, my house is set back. This house is set back, so I'm not quite as aware. But if I had children, things like I didn't had children, you know that.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of children in my life. Though I really did. I had a lot of my sister's children, for instance. Oh, and I really like children. Yeah. But anyway. Yes, it's growing. It is, because when people come here to go out onto the main drag, they'll say sometimes, "Oh, I can't get out on the main street." It's certain times, you know, of the day. It isn't so bad in the middle of the morning or something like that.
Right. But early morning and evening time, probably, when people are going to work.
Yeah.
And when you first moved in here in the 50s and went down 135, was the most traveled road the road Wood Street that went to Westboro, or West Main Street that goes up to Upton?
Oh, I don't know. I think that it was similar. I don't
Oh,
think there was very much of a difference, you know? Not that I noticed, you know, really. I'm going to put it's getting dark in here.
Yeah.
Getting dark.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, gee, this has been wonderful. It's been so interesting listening to you. Is there anything else you can think of that you remember that you want to talk about?
No.
In the past?
I write to a pen pal girl. I started just last year, you know, little first grader. And she wrote me a note the other day, and she said in it,
This is a little Hopkinton girl?
for their first grade.
All right. Yeah.
And she said and she writes a lot of questions, so then I can answer, you know. She does, she's better than I am. She helps me write it, because, you know. But anyway, she said, I go to the center school. She said, she's up at the center school, and she said, "What school did you go to when you were a little girl?" And I said to her, I just wrote it last night. I said, "I went to the same school. I went to the center school." You know, isn't that something?
That is something.
Yeah, and I said, I graduated from the high school. Yeah, she asked me that. Which school did you go to?
That's really cute. Well, Center School has a long history, and I just find it fascinating that for a few years you went to one of the outlying schools, the small one-room on Hayden Row.
That school in Hayden, I remember there was a pot-bellied stove. They didn't have any central heat. Just a stove to you know.
To keep you warm.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there was an outhouse.
Oh, okay.
You know.
And certainly you must have gone home for lunch.
I think, no, isn't that?
Or maybe you carried your lunch.
I think we carried our lunch. Well, maybe it was either way we could do it, because I think we had probably an hour, and I lived close enough. I just lived down. I think we were living in that house by
Going by Chestnut.
Chestnut Street. I think that's where we were living when we went there. Yeah.
Well, that's fascinating. Well, thank you so much, Sadie. I appreciate you sitting down with me.
Oh, I like to tell people about it, because you know it's a good town, Hopkinton, and I think that the people are, as I say, I think people are doing a good job.
Yeah, well,
I
that's
do.
wonderful to hear, because you've seen a lot of changes in Hopkinton. And Hopkinton was a wonderful little town when you first came here, and it's a great town now.
Yeah, it is.
Still, just a little bit
But
different.
it doesn't happen just because it takes a lot of hard work.
Right.
I mean, right in this time now,
Yes.
takes a lot of hard work.
Exactly. Well, thank you. So this is the end of the November 21st, 2013 interview with Sadie Benson. The interviewer was Nancy Clark.